Everybody, welcome back to my channel. I am Adorkable Rachel, and it's time once again for another episode of Rachel Reviews, so let's just hop into it. Well, episode 8, The Last Jedi, just came out, but I still haven't talked about The Force Awakens yet, and that's the only Star Wars film I haven't covered on this channel, so I figured let's take a look at that one first. And I'm gonna do my best to stay away from spoilers in this review. I'd like to go into detail, but for anyone who has not seen it yet, I'm gonna do my absolute best to avoid all that. The Force Awakens was the 7th film in the Star Wars franchise, and it's also the very first film in the new trilogy. It was directed by J.J. Abrams, which is pretty freaking cool if you think about it, because he also got to direct a bunch of Star Trek films, so he pretty much achieved every single geeky filmmaker's dream. Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, and Mark Hamill all come back to reprise their original roles. And what's funny about that to me is that Mark Hamill actually got a starring credit, even though he's only in the film for like a minute and has no lines, but who cares? The original cast is in a Star Wars film, and that is awesome! 30 years after the events of The Last Jedi, the First Order has risen from the fallen Galactic Empire and has set out to destroy the New Republic. A young woman named Rey, played by Daisy Ridley, is a scavenger on the desert planet Jakku, and she soon meets an escaped stormtrooper named Finn, played by John Boyega. Finn left the First Order because he doesn't like killing people anymore. You know what, man? Good for you. Don't be a sheep. He and Rey get roped into helping an adorably marketable BB-8 droid get back to its owner, and while all of this is going on, an apprentice from the First Order and Resident Evil baddie Kylo Ren is hunting them down to find the BB-8 droid because it has a map leading to Luke Skywalker, who's apparently been missing for some time. Han and Chewie soon come across our heroes. Woo! Sorry. And after an action-packed battle, they also find Leia, along with C-3PO, who has a red arm now. We never really know what that's about. At least they never explain it in the movie. So the race is on to defeat the First Order Starkiller base. That's totally not the Death Star times 100, before the First Order finds them and destroys them first. So just to recap, instead of the Empire, it's now the First Order, Kylo Ren instead of Darth Vader, hunting down a BB-8 droid and not R2-D2, and we're out to destroy the Starkiller base, not the Death Star. Yeah, if you haven't noticed yet, this movie kinda tends to follow a similar pattern as movie 1, and the things I just mentioned only scratch the surface of the similar elements from both movies. Okay, we'll go back to that in a minute, but first, I want to get this out of the way. I love this film so much! Oh, it just gets me all the Star Wars feels and gets my heart all gooey and gushy, and I'm just so happy every single time I watch it! I'm not kidding! I wanted this movie to be so good, and just like The Disaster Artist, I got so much more than I bargained for. Daisy Ridley and John Boyega were great leading actors to carry out the new story in this franchise. They were both wonderful performers, they had great chemistry, and they both had such intense and vulnerable moments. And we also get to see that both of their characters have such interesting paths that tie in really well with the story elements. Rey just wants her family back, and Finn just wants to lead a peaceful, non-threatening life, but they soon realize that those realities won't come so easily. And I just love the connection that these two have that may or may not be romantic, but either way, I really love seeing them interact together. Kylo Ren was played by Adam Driver of Girls fame, and I was a little worried when I first saw this film that he might end up just being a downgraded copy of Darth Vader. I mean, the mask, okay. But he actually turned out to be a really interesting villain. In some ways, he's a lot like Vader. He turned to the dark side, he plays a big part in leading the First Order, he has an old disfigured mentor, but unlike Vader when we're first introduced to him, Kylo is inexperienced and still training to master his Jedi powers. And because of this, he kinda sorta has a couple of emo boy moments, and he kinda comes off as more of an immature brat than a full-grown man. I mean, this character actually has a few temper tantrums throughout the film. Honestly, I'm a little surprised that this character works so well. And hey, that kind of stuff did make for some really fun fan art. But jokes aside, Driver's performance of Kylo Ren did leave enough of a menacing and evil impression that we do want to see where the trilogy is going to take him. Also, not going to give away exactly what his connection is to everybody in this movie, but I will say that it did take me by surprise. I did not see it coming, and suddenly his past and his motivations completely make sense. movies. And like I mentioned before, we do have a lot of the original main characters in this movie, and what's so cool about it is they're not just cameos. They actually play big parts in the film and have strong connections to the new main characters. Not gonna lie, seeing Han and Leia together again on the big screen, it really almost brought me to tears. They were just handled with such care, and they didn't feel like they were just thrown in there because they were in the other movies. Han and Leia still have spectacular chemistry together, and they really do feel like Han and Leia from the past, like they have 30 years of history on them. And I know that Harrison Ford really wanted out of this franchise. He even wanted to be killed off in Return of the Jedi originally, but goddamn, he just walks in and he just gives his all in this movie, and I really do applaud him for that. It doesn't feel like he just showed up for the paycheck, you know, kind of like how it did feel in the fourth Indiana Jones movie. No, it feels like this time around, he really wants to make sure that the audience is getting the scoundrel Han Solo that we love so much. And oh my god, that scene with him and Kylo is just... nope, not gonna say it. And yeah, at that point, I kind of saw that coming, but let's just say I had a bit of a loud reaction in the theater when I first saw it. But on a happier note, I actually really like the balance of both comedy and drama that this film has to offer. Like all of the Star Wars films, this movie also has a bunch of silly and comical moments that could have been overblown like the prequels, but they actually made this movie a lot more interesting to watch. Much more so like the original trilogy, which was really high in drama and had its great stakes, but it also had those little light moments that just made it really fun. I like the banter between Rey and Finn, the quick friendship that Finn strikes with Poe, the bickering between Han and Leia, not to mention all the fun little antics with BB-8. And it's very possible that a lot of that stuff could have fallen flat and it could have just looked like they were just throwing it in there to, you know, get some chuckles out of people, but they actually do work in this film, and because of that, I think it made it a lot easier for some of us to open up to this movie when we were so on the fence about it going in. We had no idea what to expect going into this movie. For all we knew, it was gonna turn out horribly, but having those nice moments and connections kind of gave this movie a more human feel. But also, just like the original film, this movie does such a great job of establishing the world we're in and taking us on this fun little romp, but at the same time also investing us in the stakes. There's not really a point where either or really take you out of the film. They just seem to blend together seamlessly. Well, okay, all except for this one scene that was a little bit over the top and, can you say obvious Nazi imagery much? And of course, this being a Star Wars film, we get a lot of lightsaber battles and space battles, and wow, was it refreshing to see some actual good Star Wars battles in a film. Again, just such a huge upgrade from the prequels. The action in this movie is so much fun. But also to that regard, that's kind of the best way to describe it. It's fun. Going back and watching it, I actually noticed that a lot of battles in this movie are very similar to another Star Wars film that we mentioned earlier, and that kind of does take away from the suspense since, you know, this is the very first movie and we're pretty sure that a lot of these characters are going to be fine coming out of it. But to his credit, J.J. Abrams has always been really good at creating great action sequences, and he does it here too. More than anything, it's just really cool to see the X-Wings again and seeing all the pilots work off each other. We've seen it before and we know what's gonna happen, but it's still just really fun to watch. But you know, I think that's another thing that fans really appreciate about this movie. Yeah, a lot of people have complained that there's so many elements that are really similar to the very first film, but it does this really great job of just capturing the nostalgia of Star Wars. Technically, if you think about it, this is a franchise that probably should have been dated a long time ago. But there's just something about the characters and the themes and the action and all the creativity that always make us want to come back for more. And in this film, we get so much of what we loved about the original trilogy. The fun adventure, the diabolical villain, the classic sound effects, the music, the way the movie's shot, the battles, the creative and believable aliens, the worlds the characters visit. And also, yeah, it's hard to not notice that between this film and the first Star Wars movie, there are a lot of characters and locations and even plot points that just have a lot of identical connections to each other. Okay, I can understand why that would piss a lot of people off. But you know what? I'm actually gonna defend this a little bit because I can understand why there are similarities. 40 years ago when Star Wars first came around, they had it pretty good with its humble beginnings, but I think that once the prequels came around, fans saw those as very, 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 very disappointing follow-ups, and that seemed to kind of downgrade anyone's hopes of any future good Star Wars films, if any. And I think the new filmmakers knew that if they really wanted to suck in the Star Wars fans and bring in all the old ones too, they had to create some new ideas, sure, but then they also had to create some familiarity and nostalgia. Obviously, I'm sure there's a lot more to it, but for simplicity's sake, I think that's why they did what they did. And the amazing thing to me is that even though they probably did overkill it a little bit, the movie still has very compelling new and old characters, as well as fun action and quip, and also just the right amount of drama and sense of adventure that it really works in a very watchable way. And believe me, I know that if they weren't careful, this all could have completely backfired. We could have gone in and seen all of this just so blatantly in front of us and said, oh, okay, yeah, alright, huh? I see what you did there, Star Wars, great. You're just creating the original movie, awesome. Way to rip off your own brand. And yeah, I know that some people saw it that way, but I certainly didn't. Because for the most part, I think that there was still just enough charm and originality that we were able to overlook a lot of that stuff. Plus, when you think about it, these similar elements do kind of naturally work into the Star Wars universe. I mean, it's not like there's only one bar in the galaxy. Kylo's connection to Darth Vader shows us why he is the way he is. And since this movie's release, I feel like I've only seen two really big complaints from fans. The first being that it has a lot of similar elements, which, okay, whatever, boo-hoo, get over it. But the other one being that this film does create a lot of questions. Like, what does that thing mean? What does this mean? What is that gonna lead up to? Why was that not explained? I can understand the nitpicks, but don't forget, this is the first film in a trilogy. It's very likely that a lot of these questions will get answered later. Plus, it's supposed to get us interested and intrigued. We're supposed to ask the questions. We're supposed to want to come back for more. So, despite the little nitpicks and gripes, I love this movie. I was hoping to see a legit Star Wars film, and this to me is a legit Star Wars film. It was such a great introduction back into the franchise, and also now that I think about it, it probably does work as a lot of people's first Star Wars movie. Because also in an interesting way, it's just such a beautiful love letter to the original Star Wars. The characters really grabbed me, it was epic, it was fun, it had its quirky light moments, it had its nostalgic throwbacks, great battle scenes, and all these little nuances that just feel like they truly belong in the franchise. Thank you so much, J.J. Abrams, for awakening the Force in this franchise. See what I did there? So those are my thoughts on Episode 7, The Force Awakens. So now I want to know, what did you guys think of the film? Were you suspicious going into it? Did you absolutely love it? Did you hate it? Are there any other big reasons why you wouldn't like this movie? Also let me know, who was your favorite new character in the movie? And are there any other films or TV shows that you want me to do a review of? Well, go ahead and leave your comments below. Be sure to like and share. And if you're new and like what you saw here, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And also be sure to hit the little bell button down there to get notified when new stuff comes out, because I make new videos every